Welcome back to part 2 of our conversation with Andrew Erwin of the Erwin brothers. Andrew, we had you just a few weeks ago talking about Ordinary Angels. How has that been? What kind of stories are coming in with this movie?
Jake, it's exciting. The stories have been fantastic, and the movie has been playing really, really well. It's just certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, so it's at 86% with the critics, which is amazing for a faith story. And then the audience is at 99%, and so it's a crowd pleaser. And people that continue to discover like this is not at all what I expected, and it's been exciting to see that kind of word of mouth grow. And John Gunn just delivered a special film, and so we're proud to be associated with people that keep raising the bar like him.
Yeah, well, it's exciting. It is a great movie, and I did happen to watch Southeast Christian's live stream on Sunday, and Joel and Luke were there leading worship, and they, were talking about the movie. That movie, and they were talking about Unsung coming out. So it was nice to plug both movies. So,
dude. It's all kind of coalesces together. Unsung Hero, I think has potential to be a sleeper hit. Like it's going to be one that I hope, it comes out April 26th.
Sure.
And I just, you never know for sure, but I hope that it's one that on Monday morning, all the water cooler talk in Los Angeles is going to be, where'd the heck this movie come from? And I think Joel and Luke have made a special movie that are going to catch a lot of people off guard.
Well, we are here to talk about something near and dear to our hearts, something that we've been doing for about 3 years now. But you have a new podcast called the Storytellers podcast. And so won't you tell our viewers and listeners about this?
Yeah, we're venturing into your territory, man. I'm learning by trial and error. So you'll, have to give me some tips later. But, we're talking about like, how do we let the audience be a part of understanding what making these stories is like, and letting them be kind of a fly on the wall in the conversations we have with our friends behind the scenes. And I'm not the most interesting person in the world, but I've got a lot of cool friends that I really admire. And so I'm like, let's let people understand and connect with our friends. And so we just invited people that have either been a part of our body of film work or storytellers we respect that are peers or storytellers that have inspired us. And so I just started going down our Rolodex and inviting friends and saying, hey, would you like to have a candid hour conversation about the stories that you've told and the stories that have inspired your journey? And everyone said yes. And so, the first 30 episodes of season 1 booked out like within a matter of days. And it's been, even like today's episode is Randall Wallace, who wrote Braveheart, and Randall was not even on my initial list of guest invite because I didn't know if he'd want to do it. And he reached out to me after the first few episodes had released. He's like, this Storytellers thing is a fantastic idea. When are you going to have me on? And I'm like, Randall, whenever the heck you want. You wrote Braveheart. I will talk to you whenever. So to sit down and have an hour with one of the masters of our craft and understand where those kind of stories come from. Like I was a kid in a candy store. I was just there, just like, tell me more, tell me more. It's been fascinating.
Braveheart has like one of the best musical soundtracks ever.
Absolutely. And the thing about Randall and his journey is I didn't understand his journey had music roots. So like, I was just fascinated with it. And he just talked about like he started pursuing music in Nashville as a singer-songwriter because he ran into Chris Christopherson at college, and Chris Christopherson was like, if you want to make it music, gotta move to Nashville. He moved to Nashville, was working at Opryland as a singer in charge of live animal shows. So he did a show that he co-hosted with a trained pig named Pigarachi, and he did that, and then eventually moved out to Los Angeles to pursue more music, and stumbled into this craft of screenwriting, and didn't write Braveheart until he's 40 years old. So just a fascinating story from songwriter to writing one of the most iconic films of all time that did have a musical backdrop that was fantastic. And then I think played into the rest of his work. And we talked music throughout that episode today.
You you mentioned something earlier that I want to just point out when you were talking about reaching out to all these people. You said you went through your Rolodex, and that really shows your age, Andrew.
Hey, I still read the newspaper, buddy. Like, so every single one of these gray hairs in my beard is hard fought for. I was born with an old soul, and my body's now catching up to it. But yes, my Rolodex.
What are some things that you've learned so far doing the podcast?
You know, the thing that's fascinating is this idea that the imposter syndrome never goes away. You know, and that's been fascinating to hear, you know, somebody like a Dennis Quaid talk about that, you know, and to realize, you know, that no matter how much success you have, you can't hold on to it as something that really defines you. And you never feel like you've really arrived. It's always been like, if anybody understood that I don't know what I'm doing, they would never let me do another thing. And everybody feels that. Every single person feels that. And so I think the thing for me as a storyteller is I felt a lot less alone talking to friends that have had a similar journey and to understanding what they've gone through to find their voice. And I think my hopes for the show would be that the next generation of, you know, filmmakers or storytellers that come along would hear the show and gain insight into maybe a well-marked trail for them to take it farther and for us to kind of continue to invest in the future. That's the hope and the dream. And I think the point of the show.
Yeah. We talked to Matthew West a while ago about what he does. You know, he does the podcast too. And and we both agreed that, man, it really does stretch you on some of your guests that you have, especially if they write a book. And then of course you gotta like go, you know, you probably don't have time to read a whole 300-page book before the interview, but you know, go through the book, get the key points and talk about that. He's like, man, I've never done so much reading in my life over the last couple of years. I was like, I know, man. And so, you know, just it stretches you, but it also, you know, you get to learn more about what people do, you know, and it unveils and peels off like the, you know, different things, and you get to see more of the heart of the artist or the actor or whoever you have on. So
and then the little factoids about the person that you didn't know. And so like, you know, little connections to movie history. Like I didn't know that, you know, Dennis Quaid was originally offered the lead role in Dukes of Hazzard, and that it came when the same week that he got his first movie offer, and he chose the movie offer over Dukes of Hazzard. And I was like, man, you think about the life roads that it would have led to if you made it one choice over another. You know, how do you feel about, you know, he's like, yeah, you're right. Maybe turning down Dukes of Hazzard was the wrong idea. You know, I should have accepted the role. And so we laugh about stuff like that where I just didn't know that. Or I had Eric Blehm, the author for one of my favorite books, Fearless, that we're developing into a movie. And we had him on talking about his new book, The Darkest White. And we're talking through it. And I was like, well, any connection to movie history? I read a factoid about you that I don't know is true. He's like, yes, I was an extra in Dumb and Dumber. And I was like, you were what? He's like, yep. I was a snowboarder at the time, and I had a long bleach blonde mullet. And if you watch me in the supermarket, I walk behind them for one scene. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was you. And so
I thought you was going to say he was the boy with the little bird, you know, pretty bird.
pretty bird. So anyway, you know, little moments of movie history that, you know, you kind of get to be a fly on the wall and kind of, you know, experience from a different perspective.
Yeah. Now, some of your guests that, you know, we're excited about, and you've already had her, but Candace Cameron and Patricia Heaton. And one of the really awesome things, and we're going to sound like nerds here, but Blurry Creatures, man.
Yes, that's coming up.
Todd Smith from Selah got us hooked to Blurry Creatures. He was like, I'm telling y'all, you need to check it out. And we've always been into that kind of stuff. And so we checked it out and we're hooked. And I'm like, thanks, Todd. And so, you know, we're wanting them on too as well. But I bet that was a fascinating conversation.
It was. And, you know, Luke and Nate that run that podcast have kind of developed this cult following that's based on biblical mythology and really all things Bigfoot. And kind of the idea of finding where that intersects with what we believe, you know, not taking themselves too seriously and 80s nostalgia. And like everything about that is like, yes, that. And so having those guys on was fascinating. So that episode is coming up, I think, in about 3 weeks. And I loved every minute of it. And I tell a story in there of how listening to their podcast led to me, you know, on a time where I was out in the woods, like freaking myself out. Like, what if they were right? What if Bigfoot is real? And so it was great. We had a lot of fun. We had a lot of laughs.
Yeah, I'm in the
one.
car one time listening to that one of the episodes about a mermaid, and this guy he hears these mermaids and stuff. And my wife, we're traveling. She wakes up from her nap. She's like, "What are you listening to?" I'm like, "It's mermaids, and they're real."
And they're real. Exactly. It's like okay, maybe I don't want to know all this stuff, but it's always fascinating. It's really good.
It's very intriguing. So what are some of your like future like potential guests that you would love to have on?
You know, the rest of this season's booked out. So we got Dallas Jenkins coming up in a few weeks from the Chosen. We've got doing an interview with Gary Sinise on Monday. So Lieutenant Dan, and we got Willie Robertson from Duck Dynasty coming up, and he's hysterical. I tell a couple of stories that he actually got mad at me in the middle of. He's like, "Oh, you're TMZing me, man." He's like, "You're not supposed to tell that story." So that one was fascinating. Love that. You know, future guests I would love to have on. Like, I would love to have Mel Gibson. I would love to have Chris Pratt. You know, there's some guys that I would really like to, but I have to go a little bit deeper into the Rolodex for that one.
Oh yeah, yeah. Chris would be awesome.
Round one is one level of risk, and then round two, I kind of swing for the fence. So we'll see.
Yeah, Chris would be cool. I would always love to have a conversation with Morgan Freeman. I think that
I would love that too. It was interesting because we've been talking with his team a little bit about, you know, trying to collaborate on a project, but his producing partner Lori reached out to us after Jesus Revolution, and she was like, I was a kid, I was one of the kids in the Jesus Revolution and came to faith in the middle of that. And she was like, you know, watching the movie brought back everything that I lived as a teenager. And so Morgan is somebody I deeply respect, and I think Shawshank Redemption is the most perfect movie of all time.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would love to get a chance to talk to Morgan next week. Next week's episode that's coming out next Tuesday is a fascinating individual named Sonequa Martin Green. She's the star of Star Trek Discovery. And as a closet Trekkie, I was trying my best not to geek out, but it was pretty cool.
Nice. So I guess this podcast is streaming on all platforms, Spotify,
everywhere, all of it.
Cool. Now, do you guys release like video episodes on YouTube or?
Yeah, we have a YouTube channel. It's, you know, most people consume the product on Spotify and where you get to listen to it with audio. But for those that are visual like me, we have a really nicely produced video version of it on YouTube, on our YouTube Kingdom channel and Kingdom Story Company channel. And so you can check that out there if you like watching rather than just listening.
Yeah, cool. So Unsung Heroes coming out the end of April, your podcast. Yep. What else? What's up? What else is on the radar?
Well, yesterday I got a chance to, I'm out here in LA, and yesterday I got a chance to, we're producing a movie for Dallas Jenkins called The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, based on the book that a lot of us read growing up. And so he had a room with a few of us filmmakers to get to see the early rough cut of it. So it was me and John Gunn from Ordinary Angels, and then my brother got to be in the room to watch a cut of it yesterday, and it's fantastic. It's like Wes Anderson meets The Christmas Story. It's so good. It's really quirky and interesting with heart, and it's gonna catch people really off guard. It's gonna be a Christmas classic. So that one's coming out in November, and can't wait for our audience to see that. But first, go buy your ticket to Unsung Hero. That's the one to support. That's gonna absolutely worth the price of admission. Yeah.
Well, Andrew, thanks so much, man. And another guest that you could have on your podcast is the Christian music guys. I heard those guys.
That's great. Well, that's deeper in my Rolodex. That's round two. I'm working up the courage to ask, because those guys are in demand.
Well, Andrew, you seem like a busy man. We just talked on your podcast, and it seems like every time we do talk, you're always extremely busy. And I guess this time of the year, these last couple of weeks hasn't been any different.
Yeah, it's an occupational hazard. I didn't realize when I signed up to be a filmmaker, how much of a blue collar, sweaty job it is. But it's just you do everything you can to kind of fight for the stories to be seen, and we're all in it. So it's been great.
Yeah. Yeah. We're here to talk about Unsung Hero. We've talked about it a few times, just
Mhm.
briefly in our previous chat. So go ahead and tell our viewers and listeners about this wonderful movie.
Yeah, Unsung Hero is a special one. It's the story behind the band that so many people love, for King and Country. It's kind of an origin story of their family and their sister Rebecca St. James. And when they first moved here as immigrants from Australia, they lost everything. And their father, who was a music promoter, felt like his family was in the way until he found out that his family was the way. And it's just about him reconnecting with what really matters. And the unsung hero of the family is his wife, Helen, and she kind of holds the family together. And so it's a beautiful story. But Joel and the band brought it to us a couple years ago, and he just said, "Guys, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but I want to tell my family's story. I would like to direct it, and I also want to play my father." And I said, "You're right. I think that you're a madman." And but he just was determined, and he had a look in his eyes. Like, I was like, I believe you. Whatever you see in this story, I believe it. And so there's a group of them, of us, that kind of got behind him, with Candace Cameron Bure and Josh Walsh and myself, and just kind of fought for this little story that could. And now it's hitting theaters this weekend. I can't believe it.
Yeah. What aspects of their story do you believe that will resonate with people that check it out this weekend?
I think people crave hope right now, and I think especially, it's so hard and so expensive to fight for your family these days. And it's just like so many people feel under a weight they can't get away from. And they feel like they keep getting held down by the opportunities they think that they should have. And I think this little family who didn't have anything, that they were so close to not even having a roof over their heads, just God continually provided for them in these little miracles. And just the humility it took for them to kind of walk in that and stay together as a family. And what could have been a catastrophe, Helen made into an adventure.
Hmm.
And it's just this beautiful, optimistic underdog story, to watch this family stick together. It'll bring tears to your eyes. And I'm just really, I think right now people are craving something that they can relate to, like that, of somebody that, where the little guy wins. And in this case, the little guy wins.
Yeah. Yeah, we had Helen on here a few times talking about her book and everything, but they're a very tight-knit family. And
Yeah.
I think about several years ago, we went to a concert for King Country. This is probably when their first or second album came out, and their brother was like running the merch table.
Yep.
And they do everything together as a family. And so I think that's a beautiful thing to always keep your family close and to work together as a unit.
Yeah. It's definitely a family affair. I think it just, I think the whole time when they first were trying to figure out how to pay the bills, that what they had to do is, as a family unit, they did landscaping and yard
Hmm.
work and house cleaning services and
Yeah.
all sorts of different odd jobs, in order to keep the family afloat. And then they found out their daughter Rebecca could sing, and as she
Yeah.
began to hone her voice, that turned into a moment, of her being able to step up. And then the family started fighting for her, and then everybody helped out on that. So, like you said, her brothers were the lighting techs and the video guys, and then Joel and Luke from For King and Country, they were like kids, and they were saying backup. They were backup
Yeah.
singers. And so there's a lot of really cool Easter eggs about the history of Christian music in this story that people are really, really going to love.
Yeah. Uh, the did David, like when y'all were filming this movie, did David ever say, "Hey, Joe, that's not what I said," or "That's not how I acted at that moment," or whatever? Was there any pushback from his own dad?
I think he was good natured about it. It was it's always awkward when you put your father on film,
Yeah.
I had a little bit of that when we did Woodlawn, because Sean Astin in that film is based on my father, and Sean, the character he plays. And and so it's always like, you're painting a portrait, but Joel really wanted to get his dad right, and his dad's a strong cup of coffee. Like he's intense,
Yeah.
and I think if anything, we just had to tone him down just a little bit for the movie. But he was, especially back then, he was intense. And but the cool thing is Joel even altered his look so much you won't recognize him in the role.
Right.
But when we get to the end of the movie, you look at the real life pictures of David at the time, and Joel's a dead ringer.
Hmm.
And so he altered his look severely for the film, but I think he was really channeling his father. It's pretty special.
I think it's crazy of all the people that we talk to, a lot of people still don't get that connection. Like, Rebecca St. James is their sister. And it's like, yeah,
Yep.
they used to, you know, be performers and sing back up with her. And then, now look at them. And so it's funny how many people don't realize that they're related. So,
Yeah, because she changed her name, because Smallbone is not the most
right.
cinematic name
Yeah.
that is their family name. So
Yeah.
in the movie, they show the origins of where St. James came from. But
Sure.
the funny thing is also Joel so disappears into the role of his father that I showed it the other day. I showed it to Dave Ramsey, the financial
Hmm.
genius show host, and Dave watched it and he got to the end of it. He's like, "Man, I love that story. Who was the actor that played David?" And I was like, "That's Joel from the band." He's like, "No, that's him." And he didn't recognize him. He was like, "Oh my gosh, that's Joel." So it was pretty great.
Yeah. Now, being a Christian music podcast, the music on this is what we're excited about.
Yep.
Obviously, we've heard the songs, the Striper with "To Hell with the Devil" with Lecrae, and,
Yep.
and the
Which
guy
is awesome.
is so crazy. Like we love that version, and of course, "Place in This World" with Michael, and then Amy's song "Lead Me On," and
Yep.
man, what a phenomenal soundtrack! Could you tell us a little bit about how all that came about?
Yeah. That was the guys when they want. There's several musicians that have made a huge impact on them, and so Amy and Smitty have had an impact on everybody. That's why they always end up at the center of most music stories we tell. Is Amy and Smitty are kind of our muse. And of course they intersect with this story, and so their music being part of the soundtrack was really important to the guys. And so much so that then this Inspired by album that's coming out along with the movie, they went back and re-recorded versions of those songs with both artists, which was really really special. um the Striper connection, we did the documentary Jesus Music, and
Hmm.
Joel talks about that the band that influenced them the most was Striper.
Yeah.
And Joel was a kid when his dad was promoting Striper shows in Australia, and watching them in the theatricality and how they dressed in the big outfits with the big hair, and they were so active with the audience, and it was just such a cinematic experience that he's like, if you want to understand the music for King Country, you have to understand Striper. And so when they got to this, they wanted to start it off with this Striper moment, and if you look closely, it tripped me out. But every family member makes a cameo in the film. I dare anybody to notice it on first glance. Which member of the family is playing Michael Sweet and Striper in the scene? Because on set, it so uh, caught me off guard that I had to do a triple take. I was like, that can't be, but it disappears into it. So like when you get to the movie, like take a good hard look at that lead singer, and it might trip you out. But the guys wanted to do a new version of "To Hell with the Devil," and then they invited Lecrae to be a part of it. And so I was in. They work with a producer named Ted T. That's a famed music producer in Nashville. There's a lot of big hit Christian music. He's the one that helped Rebecca with her first album. Well, they were at Ted's studio, and I went back to listen to the song, and they played it. And I was like, right as they were about to play it, I was like, guys, I don't know if I want to listen to it, because I don't know on paper how this works. That you've got Lecrae and you guys doing To Hell with the Devil. I don't know how that works. And then I listened to it, and it was epic. It was the song I did not know I needed.
Yeah.
And so for them, it was a big tribute. And then we had the premiere the other night in Nashville, and Michael Sweet came to the premiere and was walking around in the red carpet, which was kind of a cool, surreal moment to see Stryper and For King and Country in the same space. It's kind of a multiverse. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something we're pretty excited about. Now, will that soundtrack fully release tomorrow?
It's releasing soon. I don't know. I'll have to check with them exactly what the street date is, but it's coming out soon. Like it'll be, we're releasing the movie everywhere tomorrow.
Sure.
And so the soundtrack will be coming out in proximity really shortly.
Wow. Yeah, we're definitely excited. What's the website? Unsung.
Yeah, it's so it's unsunghero.movie. So you go to tickets.unsunghero.movie. That's that's where you can get tickets. This weekend, I mean, making a statement in the theater is a big deal because the industry is not going to see it coming because it's all grassroots. This one's all grassroots, and so it's built on the backs of the fans of the music. And but I think it's going to be a special weekend and a moment where you vote with your ticket and let your voice be heard. So take your friends. It's a worthy film. It will catch you off guard.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, like we always do, I like to ask the question, if you'd be willing to share something that God's been doing in your life recently that would help build our viewers and listeners' faith.
Yeah, I think right now, I think the thing is that really has encouraged me, especially on this journey over this film, is there are a lot of people that had their own brands, whether it's Candace Cameron or For King Country or our brand. And it's that kind of Ronald Reagan quote of it's amazing the things you can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit. And that idea of being a part of a unit where everybody checks their egos at the door as like, I'm here to serve. I'm here to serve, first of all, a story that we believe in, what it says about family and God's purpose in the struggle. And secondly, serve an audience, that we really want to connect with, and we want to make sure we make them a good product, and then serving each other and setting each other up to win. It has been, out of all the films we've done, I think this one has been the most unselfish for all of us. And I've seen Joel model that from the top, Joel and Luke. I've seen it in the team that created the film. I've seen it in Candace Cameron and how she's assisted. I've seen it on all the friends that have jumped in to support and help get the word out. Because we don't have the marketing budget of some other films. And it's been one of the, I think, the best rebel unit experiences I've ever been a part of. And I just think that you look at how Jesus operated with his disciples, he was the rebel unit. And I just think, my encouragement, what God's dealing in my heart is it's not about me. It's about what God's called us to do in the moment. And I'm excited to be a part of a team that has that same mentality.
Yeah. Unsung Hero is out this weekend. Please support it. Take your churches. This is a great movie. And I will say, I do have a movie pitch for you. I think you should do a movie about these three guys that started this podcast a couple years ago. They have red hair. I think it'd be a great movie.
I'm working on it. I've been working up the courage. So you might have to have me on a few more times in order for me to get the courage to ask, but I'll pitch at some point.
All right. Well, actually, another movie, I know we've pitched a few to you, just being silly, but Carmen, man, his story is pretty neat. That'd be a cool movie.
Yeah, Carmen makes a cameo in this one.
Okay.
So that we have an actor that's a ringer for the guy. Like we were doing auditions, and Carmen had such a specific kind of Italian matinee idol look. And so we were going through all the casting choices, and Joel found this one guy, and he's like, that guy, that's my guy. So when he's on screen, it'll make your jaw drop. You're like, oh my gosh, did they use AI to get this guy? No, this guy exists on the planet. It's like a dead ringer for Carmen.
Wow, cool. Well, thanks so much, Andrew.
I appreciate you, man.